Hello, welcome.
Hello.
We're joined by Cowie again.
Yes.
Welcome back, Cowie.
Thank you.
And today we are very excited. Alyssa's debut.
Yes.
Hi, Alyssa.
It's the first time on the podcast and I'm very excited.
Yeah, you've been doing so much work behind the scenes as well for Pipcast, so it's really nice to have you on the couch and chatting about something that I hope you feel quite passionate and excited to talk about today. We are talking about puberty and our role as clinicians in this space for our clients. And particularly when we were talking about it, we were talking about the shift in needs that puberty brings for a lot of our clients. And for some of our listeners, they might be working primarily with children, maybe like, 0 to 8 or that kind of thing. And for us, we work 0 to 18. But as you will speak to, it doesn't disregard if you're only working with our young kids, that puberty is something that we might want to consider. So tell us a little bit about why you're here, Liz. And I know that you recently did a PD in this space.
I did.
Why did you do it? Why were you interested in it? And what did you take from it?
Great question, Katie. I think for me, our whole approach at Kid Link is looking at a child from a very holistic perspective. And to be able to kind of approach it, I actually feel as though a lot of my clients are in this age bracket of 8 to 14. Yeah. And around those times is the onset of puberty. And I felt like at Kid Link we weren't, or me personally, I wasn't asking questions that were specifically related to puberty. And I just felt like there was a slight gap in my knowledge and my understanding of what kind of questions can I ask parents? And it's always, there's a bit of a grey area of these conversations because they can be quite uncomfortable. So I kind of seeked it out and I was like, let me find a PD on puberty so I can kind of educate myself. And I was able to come back and present it to the team, which was really nice.
For clinicians or for therapists or that kind of thing? Or was it a broad PD?
It was for clinicians. Cool. And the lady who was running the PD, she was an OT herself. So I do feel as though a lot of the lens that I work through, or the information I know is through that OT kind of perspective. I guess it'd be helpful for us to start with thinking about what is sort of puberty. I did write it down for us so I could read it out. But basically,
she's not a walking dictionary, unfortunately.
I'm not. Doesn't live right in my brain.
She comes with other good qualities.
She does.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Cowie. I guess so. It says that that puberty is a stage of development. So it's where a young person's body begins to mature into an adult's body. And I think being able to be capable of reproduction probably helps us to be able to define if we're going through puberty and those stages. So it can be driven by hormonal changes that affect your physical growth, which we might talk about a little bit later on, brain development and the changes that we know that can come with that, and also the body system, so the reproduction. And it's interesting to note that it can last up to 4 years. Wow. And I think that's an interesting point for us to be able to consider that there's going to be different shifting needs, like you were speaking about before, that can happen right at the start all the way to the end, and it can take up to 4 years.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of time. And even just thinking back to growing pains and that kind of thing, they're intense. And if we're having such shifts in our internal state and physiological state and hormonal state and that kind of thing, it can only have effect on how we present ourselves in the world and our skills and all of that kind of thing. So,
and I think there's a real shift as well in the social demands, and whether you've just started high school or you're about to kind of enter into that space, I think as well there's a lot a different dynamics of, there's going to be curiosity in the other sex. There's going to be, some people are wearing makeup. There's all these different social demands as my body is kind of retuning and realigning and my brain is going through all of these changes. It's a hard time.
Absolutely.
I know you mentioned it can sort of last for up to 4 years, which is also a great point, that it's not like a on-off switch.
It's not a switch.
Yes.
So in terms of ages, what age would we be starting to potentially see our kids going or starting puberty?
That's a great question. And there's been lots of evidence and research happening recently around the fact that puberty is actually starting at a younger age nowadays. A statistic that I have here is around the fact that the onset of puberty in females has been, occurring 3 months earlier every passing decade that we have.
Oh, wow.
And for boys, it's about a month and a half. So we are progressively seeing it happening earlier. So currently, the current evidence says that for girls, it's around the onset can be from 8 to 13. And obviously, within that kind of, there's a spectrum there. It's kind of like, is 8 too early and is 13 too late? So I definitely, something that we spoke about was being really aware of the child's developmental, like where they're kind of up to in terms of their age, and seeking out further support if we need to engage, with doctors and talk to the GP about, hey, I've noticed my daughter hasn't started breastfeeding and she's, 12. What are some of the things that we can do for that? And what's really interesting is for boys, the onset can be about a year later, so from 9 to 14. And I think something that's interesting is for boys, it is often harder to notice the changes compared to a female, because often it's internal kind of changes. Perhaps it is height, but often the first change that we see is like enlarging of the testes, which is interesting and different to, I guess, for a girl where it could be breast budding, because that is something that we can very easily kind of see and detect.
Yeah, that a parent or someone, you're able to see more easily, I guess, or it's in more of a, public space, I guess, for our bodies, where you may be able to see breast budding more easily. But for boys, that's obviously a lot harder to see. Which brings in, which is what I was super interested to sort of pick your brain on more about. It's important for girls and boys, but especially since we may not be able to physically notice when a boy may start puberty, how important is it that we educate kids on puberty? Because if we aren't able to see exactly all the stages and everything that they're at, so that they might actually need to know a bit, how important is it that they do know?
And at what point does that education start, or should it start as well?
Hugely. I think it's super important. This education sides of things is the biggest takeaway for me, I feel. So your question was around when?
Like how early, I guess, and we were talking about whose responsibility is it. We'll talk about that as well.
Of course.
But do we want to start these conversations, at 7 years old, 8 years old, or do we wait until the child starts to experience puberty symptoms, or what do you think?
Of course. I think a really good takeaway is that information doesn't scare children.
Yeah.
I think they are super curious, and we know that curiosity will lead to knowledge and understanding and hopefully mastery. And I think with the statistic that we spoke about as it's starting earlier, we do need to start the conversations around this earlier as well. And I found this very interesting that as the rate of, I guess, as the age of puberty is lowering, as it's kind of getting earlier, there's also a statistic that tells us that suicide, the age of suicide is also decreasing, which is an interesting fact as well, that perhaps some of our kids, younger kids, don't know so much about puberty because we're just not expecting them to get to that point. So starting the conversation as early as we can is super important.
Yeah, so interesting. So when we speak about education and teaching kids and teens what to expect and what's going to happen for their bodies and that kind of thing, how can we as clinicians collaborate with parents and caregivers on that? And where do you feel that information should be coming from initially?
Great question. I know that schools sometimes do a good job of sex education and sometimes they don't. I know for me personally, it was kind of very much skimmed over. And for me, the most important thing to be able to empower our parents with is, I guess, the safe and reliable information that they can pass on to their kids so that they become the safe person to come to, where it's like, hey, Mum, I've noticed that I'm smelling now, and can we please buy some deodorant? It opens up that conversation if it comes from the trusted caregiver.
Yeah.
So if a parent says, Caitlyn, can you teach my child all about puberty and tell them that they've probably started and that they're developing breast buds and provide all the education? Is that my role?
Absolutely not, Callie. I would say I would recommend to the parent, I guess, to start to reflect on how they were taught and told about puberty at this like age or when they were younger, and how comfortable or uncomfortable they feel around talking about this, because I feel as though parents are going to feel awkward. They don't know where to start.
Yeah.
They don't know how to bring the conversation up, and I feel as though they're worried that the information is going to scare their child or give their child some ideas, and that's just definitely not the case.
Or they just pop like a book in the child's room.
That's what happened for me. I just had a book.
Yeah, the like Secret Girl stuff or something, which is still a great book. I think it's Kaz Cook.
Yeah.
But I think that directing our parents more to what is reliable information and what is going to be helpful for them to then start those conversations is probably more our role, I would say, rather than initiating that discussion.
I don't know if you've seen, there's a organisation called Planet Puberty, and it is the most amazing resource that they do run like parent workshops, but you can watch webinars around supporting these conversations, especially with neurodivergent young people, which is really, really awesome. And I feel as though they have great handouts and things that help to teach parents how to describe these awkward and uncomfortable topics. So that's a really good one that I've recommended to some families as well.
Yeah, I've ever since you presented to us, and I am also, I love Planet Puberty. It's got some great stuff. I've been familiarising myself with it and providing the handouts to parents as well, which has been really helpful, because I loved what you said about the kids being curious.
Yes.
They are. I don't know.
Kids find information regardless of
all
where it is.
And Alyssa gave me a great, because when we were speaking about this podcast and I was just brainstorming, I was like, why, I want to get across the to the listeners, like why we spoke about this, why we want other people to also be knowing about this, because, we're now looking at it, Kid Link, how can we ask more about this for parents so that they can, support their children to understand. And Liz gave me such a great example of comparing not knowing about puberty to not knowing if you were pregnant. Can you – I know it sounds –
or just knowing the process of pregnancy.
It sounds wild, doesn't it? Can you please give the example because this is a great one, I thought, in terms of like, well, why would we bother basically putting ourselves as a parent or things like that in an uncomfortable position to let our kids know about what is happening that may bring up a lot of questions. We're worried we'll, overshare. We're worried about these things. So why bother?
Why bother? That's such a good question. And for me, it makes me reflect on, I guess, a lot of the clients that I see. Predictability and control a lot of the time is very important for our kids. Knowing what to expect next just in the day-to-day at school is really, really important. But for puberty as well, the example that I gave Cowie was, imagine if you didn't know what was going to happen when you became pregnant.
And you didn't even know you were pregnant.
You didn't know you were pregnant and you look down and you go, oh my goodness.
The fear in Katie's eyes.
I have twins as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my goodness, what is currently happening to my belly button? Why am I feeling all of these things?
Why am I vomiting every morning?
Why am I super tired? Why is everything feeling heavier? And if we think about that, if we were to go through puberty without having the understanding of these things are going to change and it is normal and everyone's gone through it, imagine how frightening that would be.
So scary.
So scary.
So when Liz gave me that example, that was like such a moment where I was like, of course. I can't believe I haven't been making this more explicit with checking in, especially as we chatted about earlier with shifting needs.
Yes.
I guess I have to bring us into the shifting needs, I have a bit of an example. A lot of my caseload are older. So a lot of my caseload, I haven't really been with any kids recently who have like started puberty or one, but thinking about how their needs shift over time. I've got one client at the moment, definitely, going through puberty, has a lot going on for them in other spaces too, but they have had such a change in their emotional regulation. And she said to me as well, I'm just crying at the drop of a hat. I feel really overwhelmed. Yeah, I can't even tell you why. Life is going pretty well, to be honest, on the whole. And it was so great for me because these conversations happened after I listened to Alyssa's PD. So I was like, well.
Yeah, well informed.
Don't I have some things for you? But her needs have shifted because previously, and it's still a goal, but we've worked on some emotional regulation support and strategies that used to work for her
don't work.
Don't.
Interesting. Why is that, do you think?
She's been really clear. She's very articulate. Really clear when I sort of did a bit of digging that the thinking-based strategies are not making a dent. She is too emotionally volatile is how she describes it, to almost access those. So we've moved to more of a DBT informed approach of body-based strategies to honestly try to just ride the wave a bit more. But even talk as we talk about this now, yes, we've chatted about puberty and it's almost oh yeah, that could contribute, et cetera, et cetera. I just speaking now, I'm you know what? I think I need to recheck in on the parent and this child's understanding around what is actually happening, because especially with that pregnancy example, imagine that. Imagine you didn't even know you were pregnant.
She's
Everything's
what
changing.
What on earth is happening to me?
You're feeling quite upset and I'm there going, have you used your cognitive strategies? You're what do you mean by cognitive strategies? My whole body is changing.
Particularly if you have that information in your brain this shift has probably happened because you're this age now and we know that things in your brain shift and that kind of thing, but perhaps she's not aware of that.
No, and here's the thing, and that's why as I'm speaking about it, I'm oh my gosh, of course. I feel we all had the head nod and we're all oh yeah, well, puberty and things are changing and yeah. But actually knowing what that actually means, and you were chatting about that at the start, that there's physical changes, there's brain changes, there is lots going on. So when we speak about shifting needs, that really highlighted to me how important as clinicians it is to ask more about it and to be more informed.
Yeah. So if we think about, we keep using the word shifting needs, but I think it's a really great term to use here. We've talked a little bit about, that we might have shifts in our emotional needs, our emotional regulation. What other things might we be looking for that might signify a child or adolescent's occupational needs are shifting as a result of them starting puberty?
That's a really great one. I think people quickly think of self-care, and self-care is definitely one that is very important. Thinking about for both males and females that, body odor is a thing, body hair is a thing, and self-care, thinking about menstruation, thinking about hygiene around that is very important also. I think as well, if we think about sleep, they spoke a lot in the PD about the changes, I guess hormonal changes, and how that will affect a young person's sleep schedule. And often you hear parents say, oh, they're just a night owl. We can't, they're sloths in the morning. You can't get them to sleep at night and then they're sloths in the morning. Sleep is a really big one. And as we know, that's going to contribute to a whole range of different elements and impacts that we have day to day as well. Yeah.
It's just a vicious cycle. What about things like diet as well? If we're looking at growth spurts and that kind of thing, I can imagine, I know I've got one of my clients and his mum was saying recently, he just can't get enough of food. He's just always eating and he's always hungry. And that's a huge shift from when he was, 11, 12 kind of thing. So that's probably something that pops into my head.
Yeah, definitely.
As well.
I think for boys and for girls, it's going to be different. I think with the coming of age and with puberty, often there is concerns with body image, or we're starting to become more self-conscious. I've worked very closely with one of my teens around the fact that she feels like she has to if she's eaten too much, in her perspective, she has to work it off, and she will spend a really long time on the treadmill. And the treadmill used to be a really positive, I guess you were talking about strategies before, Cowie, really positive movement kind of thing that she would do after school, is kind of her way of pacing and processing the day. But now it shifted and it had more negative connotations where she was the purpose was different. It was no longer sensory and regulating. It was I must do this because of this dieting kind of thing. So being aware of these changing needs, being aware of some people might need more food probably to fuel their body and for the energy to grow, but also that can sometimes come with the body image sides of things as well. It's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's a great one. That it's a really, as we always do, but even more important during this time and this period to be reflecting on the strategies and everything that we've utilized before, that it may need to shift, and it's not because the strategy was wrong or that similar thing, it's just not fit for purpose anymore.
For sure.
So it seems like that's really important for us to think about as well. And I wondered too, when you talk about shifting needs, I have a few kids that I've been supporting where that curiosity that you were talking about has really just led to the internet and porn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Big topic.
Big topic, too big to, fit into
a whole nother episode.
Yep, a whole nother episode. But I think that's also a really important one, that kids are curious. They are looking to learn. And so that's a really big other benefit of us supporting parents to feel more confident and competent in supporting their children with all of the knowledge and information around puberty, so they can get it from a helpful, safe, reliable source.
I could not agree more, because the curiosity, they will go and find it.
Yeah,
they will seek it out. They will ask people. It used to ask your older brother, but it might be, Googling the internet nowadays. It might be seeing things on TikTok. It might be talking to someone on the back of the bus, and misinformation. And I guess you don't want the scare factor or element, because we don't know where they're getting the information from, and we can be exposed to some tricky, complicated things with the internet nowadays.
That can be really traumatic.
It can be
for our kids too. So I think, and I haven't read the most updated stat, but a year or two when I learned about it, the average age that children would come across or watch porn is 10. That is so young.
And that's accidental, or if we are seeking it out, isn't it? It's such a young age.
Yeah. So I think that when we talk about the importance of supporting our parents and carers, is that it's actually a lot to do with safety as well.
For sure.
And depending on how young the child is or their needs, for example, I've got one child, very high needs, but especially now that we're definitely moving through puberty, we've really zoned our focus in on public versus private and safe behaviours. Needing to wear clothing, especially now, even in the home, even if it's just parents there. This child has, very high needs, but we've really shifted and ensuring that, we're providing good, safe information about masturbation, about private spaces, all of those sorts of things. And it's really rooted in a lot of safety.
Yes. It is.
That we're aiming for.
Yeah, especially because our teenagers turn into adults really quickly before our eyes. And what might have been, acceptable as a young child.
Yes.
I know that I've known families where their 17, 18-year-old child who has, significantly high support needs just walks around the home nude because that's their preference.
Yes.
But what does that look like outside of the family home as well? And how comfortable does the family feel with that? And all of that kind of thing is really important to consider when our kids' bodies are going through such changes.
For sure. And going back to what we spoke about young girls and how it can be more external and more on the outside, we really need to help families be able to advocate and talk to the people in the child's world.
Absolutely.
To, I guess, not perhaps sexualize this young girl or make comments around their body changing. Like, I know my Italian grandparents will always be, oh, look at you, you're turning into a young lady, look at you in that dress.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like that makes me feel uncomfortable as a child, but also it's like you're pointing it out and you can notice that these changes are happening in my body and I might not be comfortable with that yet.
Yeah, and even as you say that point out loud, I'm like, ugh. Like why are we as adults or anyone, just in general, but commenting on people's bodies? And then I think it just highlights, I'm not going to get over that pregnancy example that you gave because it's really sticking with me. But again, imagine if you were pregnant, you didn't know.
Yes.
You didn't even know what pregnancy was. And then these people are coming up to you and being like, oh, look how big your belly's getting.
Wow.
Or it's really happening, isn't it? You're like, what is happening? What do you – I know, but what do you mean? Why does everyone know something I don't know? Yeah. And then like you said, that's a really important part too. A whole, another episode or million, but really monitoring that we're helping parents to monitor that the language around it, that we're not sexualizing our young people.
Not sexualizing young people, the people around us. So the swimming instructor or your uncle or whoever it may be. And I think that's a really uncomfortable conversation to have. And I think for parents to have a script around, you know, we're going to the grandparents and you just have a phone call and it's like, hey, you know, we're coming for dinner tonight. Let's not talk about Jane's changing body. Let's comment on the fact that she's started doing piano lessons, or let's move that focus, because there's already so much changing and the child is comfortable or uncomfortable with that. We don't need to be kind of pointing it out as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
I would agree. I think it's just pretty wild, isn't it, too? Like, as adults, we talk about not commenting on other people's appearance or whatever. So I don't know what it is with us that, you know, when it's then kids, we're like, oh, look at this.
For sure. And I think about like boys, I think puberty perhaps like helps them. It's advantageous. You go, oh, look, you're the tallest in the class. You're the fastest in the class. You've got the biggest muscles, whatever it might be. And that they're kind of viewed as it's quite a positive sort of thing. And even making those comments, obviously it makes people feel good, but I feel as though just not commenting is always probably the safer option because we don't know where that young person is at on their journey of puberty and how they feel about it.
I think that's a really good point that you say, because I guess like as females go through puberty and all of a sudden they've got periods to deal with and that kind of thing. I know one of my clients we've been talking about that she's historically had school can't as a sort of underlying goal that we've been working on for a period of time. But now we've got every 4 weeks we're getting a migraine alongside our puberty. And so she's out of school for 2 days because of that. And then it gets really hard to get back to school. So again, this shift in her needs is like just another thing that we really need to navigate for her.
And I think it too speaks to the importance, and we'll put some notes in the show links of some great puberty resources or information for clinicians to have a look at. But when we say like clinicians have a look at, we mean for you obviously to have a look at, but to support the parents. Again, we're not putting
to pass it
what
on.
Are you
to
referring?
pass it on. Is that thing to do with knowing about puberty, like us as clinicians knowing more, understanding more and feeling more confident to help parents and carers navigate it. Because if you don't know a heap about it, it may, I mean, hopefully the doctors know as well, but you know, you see these shifting needs like that girl and you're like, oh my gosh, we need to increase medication. Or they're having a lot of emotional dysregulation. Oh my gosh, it's this. And it's like, well, actually, if you know more about puberty and the shifts that are expected and everyone's on the same page, surely it helps you to navigate that much better.
It's way more holistic, and actually may help you to pinpoint more what's going on. Like, I know we've spoken about emotional regulation, but I find executive function is also often the parents will come in and they're like, oh my gosh, Caitlyn, all the work we've ever done, it's out the door. Start again.
Like, what has happened? He's got no idea.
We've lost 4 pairs of AirPods.
This is an expensive time. Like, did we miss something diagnostic? Did we is there a regression? What is it? And then, hold on, you chat about puberty and all of a sudden it brings this understanding, because we know during that time too about the brain changes. And Liz was chatting to me a little bit about like neural pruning, how that happens in puberty. Can you just sprinkle a couple of bits of knowledge about that?
Neural pruning, I think casually we sometimes call it the dummening. Where it's like we do see this regression. It's the process of the brain kind of rebooting, restarting, and it takes a long time to get back online. And I know that we always joke about in the clinic when people turn 25, we're like, oh, your frontal lobe has finally developed. But it is true. It's going to take a long time for those, you know, final little wiring parts to kind of all talk and connect together. And you're so right. The executive functioning sides of things does really change, and sleep is really changing. Self-care is really changing. And there's just a lot of demands. So if we don't ask the questions, I feel like we're doing our clients a disservice if we're not specifically identifying and talking about the puberty.
So it sounds like, as we sort of wrap this episode up, it sounds like if we're kind of thinking about what do we really want clinicians to take away from this, it's that asking about it and being informed yourself in terms of how our clients' needs might shift during that time is really important, and not kind of just asking, have they gone through puberty? No? Okay, we'll just
tick that box.
Yeah, I've asked the question. Really thinking about what questions for your profession you might consider, and really looking into yourself as a clinician, what kinds of resources and reputable information you feel comfortable with then passing on to these families for them to then really educate themselves and have those conversations.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And practicing the awkward, not awkward, but the uncomfortable conversations yourself with the parent, or having them practice with you.
Yeah.
How do you reckon you would phrase it if you were talking to your son about this? And getting them to be uncomfortable and be awkward and clunky with you is also a really great way to help parents feel more comfortable because they've had more practice as well.
I will get you to obviously send through some links and that kind of thing that we'll put in the show notes. But I know that there are some really great, I've stumbled across some great Instagram profiles where they're quite literally just to do with having tricky chats with kids and teenagers and have scripts in there and that kind of thing. So we will pass them on in the show notes
for sure
for clinicians to have a look through as well. But thank you so much, particularly Alyssa. That was really informative and I think it was a really helpful episode. And I hope that our listeners I learned a lot. So.
Yeah, I said to Alyssa, I was like, I'm mainly coming on this one to fangirl the information that you have, because I know we just had our takeaway points, but not to add anything new. But in terms of listening to Alyssa, takeaway points in terms of procedurally, for example, we're going to add some more information gathering prompts within our intake and just things like that. So just in takeaway in terms of what we want you to know, even think about how you're going to operationalize it. Because I know for us, Liz was like, we need this to be a clearer question in, for example, even just our intake to provide those prompts.
Yes.
For the OT to be asking about it, for it to be on our mind. How do we support our team to feel more confident and comfortable with navigating these discussions as well? So in terms of operationalizing the key takeaway points, I'd love you to have a think about that too.
That's our follow-up. That's what we're going to do.
That is. But thank you for having me, which is just...
Well, thank you for joining us, Cowie.
Just a fangirl list. We hope everyone else fangirled Liz as well with her knowledge on puberty.
It was so much fun. Thank you
She's
guys.
smiling. I hope she's going to come back.
I think I will. You might see my face again.
All right. Well, hopefully see you next time. And thank you.
Thank you.
Katie.
Bye.